I said, this is one of the biggest gaps between the best and second best player we've ever seen, talking about A'ja Wilson in the WNBA. And I'm confused because I'm seeing fans bring up Caitlin Clark. Like, don't get me wrong, she's really good, but she's barely the best guard in the league, let alone the best player in the...
All the MVP candidates on points generated per game, points scored, points generated, and by assists. Now, as you guys can see here, Caitlin Clark got hurt at the beginning of this season, but she's doing this with only 31 games. So when we sit up here and say Caitlin Clark is not the greatest, at least right now, you're lying to yourself because she clearly is. The numbers.
Caitlin Clark is also first in the WNBA in total points created. She is first in the WNBA in points per game created. She is first in points per minute when she is on the court. Leads the league in assists per game, and she is also third overall in scoring.
A'ja Wilson is not going to like this one. For most of this season, the MVP conversation has had her name written at the top in permanent marker for trophies deep, acting like the throne was hers for life. No questions asked, no real challengers in sight. But something just shifted, and it did not shift quietly.
A'ja Wilson, Olivia Miles,
Kelsey Mitchell.
Can I get there?
Oh, my bad.
Kelsey Mitchell, Paige Beckers.
You hear in that clip, Aaliyah Boston jumps in as Candace is speaking and says, make sure that you say Kelsey Mitchell. Now, who Aaliyah Boston didn't mention, who Candace didn't mention, was Caitlin Clark. And this has obviously...
Caitlin Clark went from barely cracking a top 5 mention to sitting in the #1 conversation. And she did it without asking anyone for permission. Without a press tour. Without a single soundbite begging for respect. She just played basketball, and the numbers did the talking for her. Caitlin Clark
just made WNBA history. 45 points, 10 assists, and the Indiana Fever beat the Seattle Storm. And this wasn't just a career night, it was record-breaking night. First player in WNBA history to record 40-plus points and 10-plus assists in the same game. Set a new Indiana Fever franchise record with 45 points. Added another historic milestone to a career that's already rewriting the record books. And she did it all while still on a minute restriction. When Caitlin Clark is healthy, she changes everything. The pace, the spacing, the energy, and nights like this remind everyone why she is one of the biggest stars the game has ever seen.
Back in July, WNBA players themselves voted on the league's best guards. And Caitlin Clark landed at number 11. 11th, behind names she was outscoring and outplaying on a weekly basis. 4th in scoring, 2nd in assists in the entire league, and somehow 11th among guards according to her peers.
Caitlin Clark, on a vote by WNBA players, was voted the 11th best guard in the sport. At this point, I think it's funny. Fans ranked her 2nd, media ranked her 3rd, WNBA players voted her as the 11th best guard. Indiana's scoring 94 a game. It's the highest in 16 years. She's the #1 shooter, distributor, play initiator, playmaker. She's 11. She's 4th in the league in scoring, 2nd in assists, and she's the 11th best guard. I mean, the animosity toward Caitlin Clark, it's so...
That is not a stat. That is an opinion. And it was wrong the moment it was published. Players like Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young landed right behind her in that same vote. And even they would probably admit, if you caught them off guard, that the gap between 11th and where Clark actually belonged was never close to accurate.
Caitlin Clark voted 11th best guard by WNBA players. That's crazy. I think people need to look at themselves in the mirror and realize, like, man, you got some insecurities if you sitting down and putting Caitlin Clark as the 11th best guard. Y'all need to go to a therapist and figure out what childhood issues you have. Because if you're sitting there and looking at yourself in the mirror and putting her as 11th best guard, and you're putting you as 8th best, like, come on. This is...
Here's the thing about disrespect like that. It does not stay buried forever. 2 weeks after that vote went public, Clark walked into a game against Seattle and dropped 45 points with 10 assists, becoming the first player in WNBA history to post a 40-point, 10-assist game in a single night. Not a good stat line. A historic one, a first ever, never been done before line that the entire league had to sit with. So while 11 players were being ranked ahead of her at her own position, Clark was quietly setting records that none of those 11 players have ever come close to touching. It is almost poetic timing, honestly. Voters cast their ballots, and within days, Clark answered with the loudest response available to her. A historic box score that nobody could spin, nobody could explain away, and nobody could argue with.
45-10. Can I interest you in that? From now on, Caitlin Clark, that's how you shoot. That's how you motherfucking shoot. 11 for 18, 6 of 10 for 3, clutch 3 after clutch 3. After everybody been on her fucking back, she came back and showed y'all she's the motherfucking one. Excuse my language, but I gotta say it because she ain't gonna say it, so I'll say it for her. Balled out tonight. Even when people are out there shooting shots when they should have been shooting the ball in the fourth quarter, she had 16 points and she was hot. Led the combat, down 6 in the fourth. Play after play, 16 points, 3 assists. She made every big play. This is what I'm talking about. When all the haters and doubters are talking about you and they coming at you game after game and you on a minute restriction and you score all the points in 29 minutes.
And that is exactly the pattern that has followed her all season. Everybody underrates her. And then she goes out and makes the underrating look foolish within a matter of games. It happened with the preseason rankings, it happened with the guard vote, and now it is happening with the MVP race itself, where a conversation that completely excluded her a few months ago now has her name sitting right at the very top.
Boston says Kelsey Mitchell is the MVP. A lot of people say it's A'ja Wilson, but Caitlin Clark is making this conversation very interesting. Why? Look at the numbers. Over her last 10 games, 24.7 points a game, 9 assists, and she's shooting 47% from the field and 41% from 3. That is an MVP level stretch. A'ja Wilson still has an incredible case. I mean, she's A'ja. And Kelsey Mitchell absolutely belongs in the conversation, but Caitlin Clark is making a late push that is getting pretty hard to ignore.
Now here is where it gets uncomfortable for A'ja Wilson. Clark is not just showing up in the MVP conversation anymore. She is leading it. She is currently out in front of every other candidate in points generated per game, total points scored, and assists, ahead of her own teammate Olivia Miles, who sits in second place, just 34 points behind her. She is ahead of Kelsey Mitchell, and she is ahead of Wilson. Let that sink in for a second, because it gets even wilder when you factor in one detail nobody is talking about enough. Clark has played roughly a game and a half fewer than the players she is beating in these categories. She is doing more in less time than everyone chasing the same trophy.
At some point, the talent is just undeniable. Y'all, some of y'all that are not giving it up for Caitlin Clark, I just simply don't understand I don't know what you're watching. I heard Candace Parker and Aaliyah Boston giving their list for MVP candidates, and I did not hear Caitlin Clark's name. I did not hear Caitlin Clark's name. What is that about? WNBA Elite Offensive Impact, league rankings across key offensive metrics. Look at this, look at that first column. And you're telling me this is not an MVP candidate? Huh? Points per game, Caitlin Clark, third. Look at the rest of the column. Oh my goodness. Assists per game, first. Points created, first. Points per game how if you want to say A'ja Wilson is the MVP, I know A'ja Wilson's very dominant. Olivia Miles having an outstanding wow. I mean, Kelsey Mitchell is a hooper. But for you not to even put Caitlin Clark on the list of MVP candidates, come on now, let's not do this, y'all.
Think about what that actually means. It is one thing to lead a stat category when you have played every single game and logged every single minute available to you. It is a completely different thing to lead it while missing time while other players are getting extra games to pad their totals, and still coming out ahead anyway. That is not luck. That is not a hot stretch. That is a player operating on a different level than everyone else circled around her, doing more damage in fewer minutes than her closest competitors can manage with a full workload. And it does not stop at the box score. Clark now ranks fourth all-time among more than 850 guards in career points with 690 total, a number most players spend a full decade chasing. and she is doing it years into her career, not decades. On top of that, she leads the league in makes from behind the arc, the exact shot that defines modern offense, the shot every team builds its spacing around. And this season alone, she hit a career-high 32 mid-range shots, more than her first 2 seasons combined. That is not a small jump. That is a player expanding her entire game in real time, adding a shot that was not even part of her arsenal before and mastering it well enough to blow past her previous 2 years put together in a matter of months. Think about what it actually takes to add a shot like that mid-career. Most players spend an entire offseason retooling their footwork, drilling the same pull-up jumper thousands of times in an empty gym, hoping it translates once the lights come on and a defender is closing out at full speed. Clark did that work, and now defenses cannot simply sag off her and dare her to shoot from mid-range anymore, because she has proven she will make them pay for it. ESPN has also flagged something that deserves its own spotlight. Clark generated over 40 points created in a single game earlier this season, the most by any player in WNBA history. Not just this season's history, league history. That number accounts for the points she scored plus the points she directly set up for teammates. And it is the kind of stat that measures true offensive gravity, not just individual scoring. It tells you she is not padding a stat sheet by chucking shots. She is running an entire offense through her hands and making every single possession more dangerous because she touched the ball.
Breaking her own records now. Caitlin Clark is without a doubt having her best season as a pro, and she's on pace to make even more history. But you just gotta hear some of these crazy numbers. Let's start with the one that just makes no sense. There have been 120 20-point 10-assist games in WNBA history, right? CC has 19 of them in less than 3 seasons. She even has more than every other franchise except her own, of course. She has 9 20-point 10-assist games this season alone, the most by any player. Whose record did she beat? Her own from 2024. She became the fastest player in history to reach a combined 1,500 total career points and 500 assists. Caitlin's the only player in history to average at least 20 and 8 in a single month, and she's done it 5 times already. And she's on track to be the first to average 20 and 8 in a single season. Oh, and the Fever have been winning. They're now first in the East and 4th overall. They've won 7 of their last 9 games, winning by an average of 14 points per game. In the first game of that streak, CC had the game of her life. 45 points, 10 dimes, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. First in W history with 40 and 10 in a game. Put it this way, only 4 NBA players have notched a stat line like that in a single game. She's 3rd in scoring, she's tied for 1st in assists. So will CC catch Asia Wilson for MVP frontrunner and help the Fever?
That kind of number does not happen by accident either. It happens when a point guard sees the floor a full step ahead of everyone else on it. When she is already calculating the next 2 passes before the ball even reaches her hands. Watch the tape back and you will notice defenders biting on pump fakes that are not even real pump fakes. Just Clark reading their weight distribution and making a decision half a second before they do. On top of all of that, Clark was just named Conference Player of the Week for the 4th time this season. 4th, that is not a 1-week hot streak that media outlets are overreacting to. That is a player being recognized over and over at regular intervals across an entire year. When a player earns that honor for separate times, it stops being a coincidence and starts being a pattern that voters cannot keep pretending